Hello and welcome to the second episode or video on the Senatus Populusque forum suggestion thread dealio. So just to reiterate what this is, basically the Imperator forums have a deal where you make your suggestions on the suggestion forum, and the top 3 suggestions of each week are compiled together into a single pinned thread up here in the stickied area, and so that devs can more easily find what is most popular amongst the community. The plan for me, for my videos here, is to have a look at the top 3 suggestions of each week, give my thoughts and feedback on them, what I would do to change them, if I like them at all, if I think they'd be good for the game, and basically make some ad revenue on talking about other people's ideas. Hey, pays to be honest. Let's go! 3 most voted suggestions from the 10th to 16th of August. So, first up, we have with 45 votes, Ashandresash's thread looks into the possibility of having a little of trade geopolitics. Alright, let's have a look at this then. So, unlike other Paradox games, there's almost no conflict in Imperator Rome, which makes it really hard the emergence of strategy. Why would you clash with other powers other than painting the map in their direction? I suggest trade as a good candidate for generic organic conflict in Imperator Rome, but it would need to be revamped. Okay, so to start with, I agree with him. I think it's difficult because in my original review of Imperator Rome, way back when, it's like 15 months ago now, back when Imperator first came out, I praised trade, the original trade system, which I no longer like, and I don't agree with my original review on trade at least. I praised it as driving conflict. I think I specifically pointed out the scenario of you being Syracuse and being completely trashed on by the Romans because they had access to iron, which is such an important trade good. So you, as Syracuse, even if you've conquered all of Sicily, you need to go and find iron from somewhere, and the best places for you to find iron as Syracuse is either going into Sardinia, the south of Sardinia has some iron, or going into Crete and into Polyrrhenia. Both of those places have iron. It's relatively close. One is easier than the other to get to, of course. But I praised Imperator Rome's trade system for driving that kind of conflict. I need this trade good to survive. I need this trade good to thrive. I need this trade good to expand. So I need to go to war in order to secure a supply of this trade good. I praised Imperator Rome for that. I don't agree with that really anymore. I still think that yes, if you're stuck without iron, you're kind of fucked, and you do need to find a source of it. So in that way, that is still true. But I don't think that's not like the whole story anymore. I think there's a lot more about the trade system that can be criticized, and yes, this is one specific area where it can be praised, but that's just for iron. You don't really have to have horses in your armies to survive, so finding a source of horses isn't as big of a deal. Any other trade good, it doesn't drive conflict. It is literally just iron that really would drive conflict in this way. So that's why I no longer agree with my original review. But let's see what Ashandresash's suggestion is then. Three are the main problems I think trade mechanics have in Imperator Rome. Trade in Imperator Rome is an internal issue. As it is right now, trade depends on your social structure basically, with higher classes generating trade routes and their subsequent revenues and bonuses. So little to no interaction with other countries, and it shouldn't be so. Okay, so this was clearly made after Menander was released. So he's talking about the higher classes is generating trade routes. Okay, good. So we've got somewhere to start with that. I would say that yes, the way you generate trade routes is entirely internal. So I do get where he's coming from there, and trade routes that you're trading with other countries generally, but the routes themselves generated by only your own internal politics, your own internal social structures, is a little bit of a disconnect there. So I absolutely do agree with that. You know, the amount of trade you want from another country should be determined by the amount of trade routes you have should be determined by how many trade routes you want to have. And maybe it's very interesting. Like, how would you kind of fix that disconnect? Because if you're trading with some other country, you obviously want the trade route to fill that connection. And then you would have each province maybe having a total amount. I guess the issue here is seeing the maximum amount of trade routes in a province as something you always want to be at, and never something that is just, oh, this is the maximum amount you can have. You never go over that. You know? Whereas right now it's like, I want to fill every single trade route, regardless of what I trade in. I need to fill it. I need to fill this spare slot. I think that is the issue there, to be perfectly honest. Maybe the problem is with us all along. Who knows? But yeah, that is... It's an interesting disconnect that... I mean, you can tell that I'm tripping over my words now. It's because this is something that I have not thought of before, and it's making me think on the fly, rather than something that I've considered for a long time before making a video about it. But yeah, it's an interesting disconnect that I'd not thought of, so... Okay. Moving on, before my brain melts. The map in Imperator Rome is flat. EU4 cleverly made of trade a matter of dispute. No, I disagree. No, I absolutely disagree, and no, absolutely not. Okay, so I think... perhaps this guy's first language is not English, so it's a little bit difficult sometimes to understand exactly what he means. But here, I believe what he means is EU4 is doing a good job with trade, because trade is a matter of conflict between nations. They're fighting for trade control with predetermined trade nodes. I think calling this clever is wrong, because the trade system in EU4 is terrible. It's not a trade system at all. It's a system of theft. So I absolutely cannot, under any circumstances, agree with this. This is just wrong to me. But let's see where he's going with it. Fixed flows connecting them, and certain provinces greatly increasing your trade power in the node. In comparison, Imperator Rome's map is flat. Trade range is indifferent to geography or development in civilization. This is bad both in simulation and gameplay aspect. Okay, so I agree with this. I think trade range being flat is probably a bad thing. Being indifferent to geography, agreed. I don't think you should be able to trade with countries that are, say, over the mountains, and I'm just gonna import some gold from you, or I'm gonna import some elephants from Carthage to Bohemia, north of the Alps, because that's totally a thing that could possibly happen, and actually is in Imperator. So I agree with this part. I think calling out EU4 as a way of doing trade well is insane. I think I can't, just absolutely not under any circumstances. No. This, however, I do agree with this little bit here. Trade in Imperator Rome is a matter of luck. Agreed. If someone else trades the iron before you get to it, then you don't get it. So yeah, agreed there. Once a region is in your range, you can import any good that is available. In fact, getting the good you want is a matter of luck. You only need that nobody is already importing it. Doesn't make any sense in a strategy game, so a less arbitrary system is needed. Yeah, I agree with that. Other Paradox games also feature trade, like the aforementioned EU4, which has a terrible trade system, Vicky 2, and Stellaris. I think that rather than a rigid model, EU4's as EUFO's trade nodes. Victoria 2 and Stellaris bring some ideas to a more dynamic system, like diplomacy playing a central role, and Victory's series of influence. And investments building your trade network. Stellaris' starbases. My proposal would be... Okay, so just before we go into the proposal, I think trade in... So I'm thinking of trade between nations in Stellaris, and it's a case of, you know, you having your... you're basically selling goods. You know, you've got a certain amount of minerals and a certain amount of energy, and you can trade between nations. But obviously there is also just, you know, your trade income, your trade value of your various planets, and you're moving that trade value to your home planet, and, you know, you got your star bases to protect it and move that trade along, and you're getting value there as well. I don't consider that really a trade system that works for Imperator. I'm not sure where he's going to go with this. But we'll see. What is his trade proposal? Because I have my own trade proposal. I mean, I've made a video on it already, I think. And again, link to that will be in the description if you want to go and check that out. And I still kind of stand by it. I still think there is some tweaks that I would make to that suggestion, but I still stand by, you know, the general premise of, you know, trade should move. Trade shouldn't be able to go through places where it's not allowed to go through. Trade should, you know, people should be able to intercept trade, that kind of thing. And trade should never be theft. So, you know, EU4, get out of here. Anyway, let's see what his suggestion is. A trade range should be drastically reduced, and not only distance but infrastructure and geography should affect it. With no ports other than trade routes to immediate provinces should be hindered, agreed. There could be geographic features increasing or reducing range, and civilization should also play its part, making difficult trade with tribal regions unless some diplomacy or investments are involved. Okay, so first off, solid agree. If you don't have a port, you should not be able to trade with fucking people miles and miles and miles and miles away over a bloody ocean. Just absolutely not under any circumstances, no. If you are in the center of Iberia, you shouldn't be able to trade with anyone who isn't, say, Iberian. But that also comes into account the idea that, you know, Carthage is trading with an Iberian tribe. That Iberian tribe is then, in my opinion, should be allowed to trade on what they've just bought from the Carthaginians for maybe a higher price to inland Iberian tribes. So trade sort of like, you know, moving in steps, getting more and more value that way. That's what I'd like to see. Not sure how you'd really work that one out, though. But anyway, yeah, no, geography affecting trade, absolutely agree. Alright, trade should be a matter of power or influence rather than arbitrary. It's great that demand depends on your social structure. As it's great that demand depends on your social structure. Didn't you just, like, criticize that earlier? Whatever. Supply should not be arbitrary as it is now. Trade power and influence should shape the commercial network of a country, allowing them to access foreign goods or to export yours. Trade agreements should be actionable for a country with enough trade power and influence, which should have consequences. Trade power and influence should be built thanks to infrastructure, investments, navies, policies, pop features, as well as by diplomacy. So, this is all very... is metaphysical, like something that would work here. It's concept, right? There's concept here. There's not really any kind of suggestion as such. Trade power and influence should shape the commercial network of a country. I mean, what is a commercial network of a country? You haven't really defined that. Allowing access to foreign goods, yes. I think what he's trying to say here is basically something along the lines of, if you are a very wealthy trade powerhouse, say you're Carthage, and you want some Iberian gemstones. Can't even remember if Iberia has gemstones. Just pretend that they do. You want some Iberian gemstones, but the Iberians are trading those gemstones to another Iberian tribe. As you have more trade power and influence, and you know you're strong, your trade influence is really strong, you should be able to say, you know what, you stop trading with them and you trade with us instead. and that consequences could be the nation who's currently lost that trade route that they valued will not like you anymore. They may want to have some sort of conflict with you because of that. I think that's what he's saying, and I agree with that. Okay. Trade should be a matter of two or more, so diplomacy needs to be involved. Once one country has enough trade power and influence over another, it may form trade routes with it and even take more control of its economy. Those trade agreements wouldn't be set in stone, and depending on their relative trade power and influence, other countries could adopt actions like cancelling trade agreements, allowing casus belli, etc. The door should be open to economic subjects with their trade routes now controlled by their overlord, peace treaties reducing trade power and influence over certain countries, embargoes closing a country's market just for your exports. Yeah, no, I agree with all that. That's like these things, they're not really proposals. They're more, concepts. Like, there's nothing here I disagree with, but there's also very little here that's like actionable. It's like he's making suggestions and then saying, devs, you work out a system that follows these rules instead of suggesting a system. Is my issue with this suggestion. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just reading it wrong, maybe I'm missing something, but it just seems a very conceptual suggestion, which there's nothing wrong with it being a conceptual suggestion. It's just, yeah, it's, I don't know. It's not really an idea as such, as far as I can tell. In conclusion, Imperator Rome needs more organic conflict, otherwise it could seem just a simulation game where your ultimate goal is to paint the map or build peculiar cities, improving Imperator Rome trade mechanic, making of it something less flat, making Joffreyan civilization matter less internal, open to diplomacy and wars and less arbitrary, with trade power and influence shaping country trade network, could help to bring more interaction and conflict among countries. There could be sources of conflict other than trade, but I think a natural way to get it, and developed trade mechanics would also help other features like diverse economic strategies, taxes versus trade income, feed internal conflicts. Not all social classes benefit from commerce, cultural and technological exchanges, epidemics through trade routes, etc. Alright, so I think what I'm going to say about this one is, conceptually, these things I agree with. This is wrong, and I prefer my own trade rework suggestion. That's pretty much all I can say about this one. Let me know if you agree with me. I mean, it's got a lot of agrees. People agree with this suggestion, so maybe there is something I'm missing here. But we'll see. We'll see. I'd like to know your thoughts on this, because I feel like there must be something I'm missing. But anyway, let's move on to the next suggestion. The next one up is graphics models by Marcus Pica. Received 44 votes as well as several answers and is in second place. So let's have a look at that. We want graphic models for holy sites. Agree. Settlement improvements. Farms, mines, provincial legation, barracks. Agree. City improvements. Temples, farms, aqueducts, granaries, etc. Agree. Trade routes represented by ships, carts, and dirt roads. Agree. More culture-specific ports, forts, city architecture, like the Hellenic port and Acropolis fort we got with Magna Graecia. Agree. City walls surrounding the city after a certain level of fort is built. Agree. More wonders, the coastline of Carthage. Agree. Sanctuary at Delphi. Agree. Alright, natural environment and human activity animation, so siege equipment and progression, herds of animals, hustle and bustle of ports and cities. Solid. Agree. Geographic labels, historic names of mountain ranges and rivers, etc. Agree. More culture-specific units, not only of infantry type, but Dahe horsemen. Okay, so this one, I've said this before, and I'm going to go into it again and explain why these are not in the game right now. Basically, the issue is that to add in an extra type of unit to the animation requires an exponential amount of animations. It's like this. I think it's like the square cube law or something. Adding one extra, like doubles the amount of work. Adding two extra, like triples the amount of work, etc., etc. It exponentially amounts of work more. So right now we have 1 infantry versus 1 infantry. That is 1 animation. To add in a cavalry, you'd have an infantry versus an infantry versus cavalry, and cavalry versus cavalry. So you'd have 3 animations. If you add in a third type of unit, say fucking chariot or an elephant, you got infantry versus infantry versus cavalry, cavalry versus cavalry, elephants versus cavalry, and cavalry versus infantry versus elephants, and then elephants versus elephants. So to add in 1 type of unit, you've got 1 animation. 2 types of unit is 3 animations, and then if you add in a third type of unit, it's 6 animations, and it just gets more and more, exponentially more every time. Square cube law, interesting stuff. That is why it's not in. Having said that, I still want it to be a thing, specifically for horsemen. I don't think having every single type of unit is viable or worthwhile. But I would say that I would like to see 1 extra, 2 at a maximum, and it's horsemen. I want to see horsemen, and that's it. I'd be happy if they just had a horse animation that is, horse versus infantry and horse versus horse. Even, horse archers would use the generic, a horse animation. You can't really have them shooting while someone else is stabbing them, I think. But yeah, that's why. I agree, I want this. But at the same time, I understand why it's not in. Anyway, immersive sound design that accompanies the models. Are we talking about, like, when you zoom into an animation of 2 people fighting, you can hear them fighting? And you want immersive sound design to have different people fighting? I mean, we've got an animation now of when you are drilling your units. They're stabbing like the wooden man, and that's got some immersive sound design, I guess. Add your suggestions in the comments. Cool. So apparently there's more as well. A post by Strife also has some. He wants graphic models for holy sites, settlement improvements, moving through trade routes. Okay, I think he's just implemented that into his original one. I agree with all these and imagining them as well. I hope someday we'll get them. I think the history of paradox-around strategy games Imperator made unprecedented leap forward in map design, allowing us to immerse in the world as if we were playing Civilization. I don't really find Civilization very immersive, but agreed. Next logical step is to make the map, or now rather the world dynamic, as in Civilization, so we can make our mark upon the world, etc., etc. Okay, yeah. Solid agree. Yeah, I want more stuff on the map, so that gets an agree from me. Alright, now, finally, with 27 positive votes, third most approved title is Trunting's, entitled Philosophical Schools and Cultural Life. So let's see what he has to say here. My second suggestion in this subforum, and the last for today for sure. I'm suggesting events regarding the formation of the major philosophical schools of the age. The schools would be something in between CK2's societies and holy orders. They can own certain buildings, such as the Academy of Athens, and give bonuses on a provincial level. Each school has its own head, but schools can only be allowed to form in very prestigious cities, such as Alexandria or Athens. Rulers could have their children tutored in schools, and also join schools themselves as lay members. The most prestigious patron of a school would be able to influence the doctrines of the school, which could be something like Stellaris' civics, only with assets redrawing major philosophical developments. Alright? So, for example, at the start of the game, there is the School of Athens, led by Theophrast, the Sophist School, led by a random generated guy, and the Eleates, the Pythagoreans, etc. Each of these schools has one starting doctrine, which is named after the school. Then they have doctrine trees, which the most prestigious ruler can influence. So it reminds me of the way technology works in CK3. All these doctrines give either internal or external bonuses, while internal meaning speed of gaining the next doctrine, and external meaning doctrines influencing the outside world. Each school has up to 5 philosophers existing as characters. These can be sent to other provinces or be invited by foreign rulers to found sub-schools of the original school. For example, the Aristotelian Academy of Alexandria. It's just an outlining of an idea how to integrate an important part of the antique life into the game. I know it would take time to program, might not be a top priority, but what's shared nonetheless. Yeah, that's fine. I would say that it might need to be integrated into another system, like either technology system, the culture system, or religious system. I could see it being implemented into any one of them, because right now, okay, so say you've got these 3 schools in the Hellenic world. Would you let every country on the map sort of have access to these schools, or would you tie it to people only with a Hellenic culture, or would you tie it to people only with a Hellenic religion, or would you tie it to the Greek traditions tree, so culture? I think something like that needs to be tied to something along those lines. I think I would lean more towards a cultural school, so tie it into the culture rework, having centers of cultural learning. So obviously you'd have your Hellenic center of cultural learning, you could have your Italic center of cultural learning, your Celtic center of cultural learning, these kind of things. I could see that working. I could definitely see that working. Adding more flavor to the game is always something that's going to be welcome by me, and this is just pure flavor. So yeah, no, I could see that working. As for the bonuses you get, if all that the internal bonuses is the speed of gaining the next doctrine, not too fussed about that. But the external doctrine influencing the outside world, like you haven't given any suggestions on what these doctrines actually do. I could see it being something a little bit like the technology system in CK3, where say you've got say you've got Theophrast here. He is in Athens, so Athens gets to decide where this school is going to research, and then it would have much slower than the regular technology. It would have a tree of different bonuses that you could get, and Athens gets to decide what you are researching next in this doctrines list, and then that doctrine will apply to everyone in the Hellenic world. So for example, in this doctrine list, maybe there is something about I don't know, stability gain plus 0.1 per month, something like that. I don't know. That's the thing that the Athenians have decided to take, that then applies to everybody in the Hellenic world. But to do that, they've foregone an idea of more discipline for their troops. They've chosen stability over military prowess. And if Sparta was in control of the school, then they may have chosen the military kind of side of things, and then forever the stability one would be locked. So whoever would be in control of the schools could decide what the rest of their culture is sort of leaning towards, if they follow this school. Say if there's 3 schools in the Hellenic world, you get to choose one of them to go down. You may be able to switch at a cost of stability or something. I'm not sure. I'm just sort of trying to theorycraft what exactly these bonuses and how they could work are. But yeah, no, it's certainly an interesting one. But yeah, I can see it working. But yeah, those are the 3 Senatus Populusque suggestions for the week of the 10th to the 16th of August. We've got one left before I'm all caught up. As I'm recording this, it is the 25th, so very soon there will be another thread, probably even today. No, it was actually yesterday. Okay, so this is the second. No, this is this one. Damn it. So this one was posted yesterday. The next one is going to be in a week from now. Okay, so ignore all that I just said right there. We've now done the second of 3. There's one more video, and then I'm all caught up, and then there's going to be another one next week when this comes out. But yeah, that is the second of the Senatus Populusque suggestions. I hope you've enjoyed it. I would love to know your comments on all of these various suggestions of the, from Ashendra Sash's, Marcus Pica's, and Trunting's. I very much agree with Marcus Pica here. This one's interesting, and this one is I don't know how to really put my thoughts into words on this one. I agree, but at the same time, it's like I didn't really see much of a solid suggestion there at the same time. But yeah, it was heavily upvoted, so maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments if I am wrong. But thank you anyway for watching. If you want to support the channel, then likes and comments are always appreciated. Also have a Patreon page if you are so inclined. Link to that can be found in the description below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.